Well, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, just to welcome you all to this session where we're going to take a look at Microsoft Forms, very much in the context of how it can be used to ease administration within a school, and particularly in terms of gathering information and data from members of the school community, maybe members of staff, or maybe families, maybe children. Forms can be a really powerful tool to help us with that. And as we go, I'll try and the aim today is to show you some of the basics in terms of what's possible, and then maybe give you some ideas in terms of how you might go ahead and actually use it in a school environment. Thanks to those of you that have had a go at completing the survey that I conducted a moment ago, which, as you may have noticed, used forms. So you can use forms within a Teams meeting, as I have done then. So that's really helpful. I can see that we've got a mixture of experience. A couple of you have rarely used it. Somebody's used it a bit, but just cover the basics, and somebody who has used it quite a lot, and that's fine. It's great to have a mixture of experiences today. We're going to go right from the basics onwards, so don't worry, but I will try to get to some slightly more interesting functionality as well. Here's what we're going to cover. Yes, the basics. We'll look at the advanced functionality, including branching. And branching is basically the technical name that we give to the process whereby you can control what questions different people are presented with depending on what they've answered to a previous question. So, for example, you might use branching if you're asked a question, did you like the cake? And if somebody says no, then you might say, well, could you tell us more information about why you didn't like the cake? So that's it, you know, and yeah, if somebody said yes, maybe we could ask them a different question. And that's logic that we can put into the flow through a questionnaire, is what we call branching. We'll talk a bit about that. And yeah, I'm going to show you how best and how safely you can share a form with different people, regardless of whether they're within your school community or beyond. And we'll talk a little bit about processing and analysing data as we go as well, so that will be good. Well, what I'm going to do is just start sharing my my screen rather than this PowerPoint presentation, and we're going to dip straight in to forms. Let me get myself set. Okay, so forms is a Microsoft package, part of the 365 suite. You will need to have a Microsoft login details to be able to access it, but if you have a educational Microsoft account, you will have access to forms by default. And in your, maybe you're in your email, or you know, if you're logged into the 365 system, you'll have these 9 dots in the top left hand corner that we can click on, and we can go to forms there. Alternatively, you can if you just search in your search engine Microsoft Forms, it will bring you to this page. And when I log in here, I can see all of the forms that I've created, and I can see down the middle column how many people have responded to them, which is quite useful. So I can archive all of the old forms which I've created and shared with people, and reference those in the future. You know, so it's good. You know, I don't think there's really a limit to the number of forms you can create in your account. There's a lot there. Now, just something to say, and I find it sometimes a bit of an annoyance, because you know, the focus for this session is very much on use of forms in an admin setting. And Microsoft, you know, there's a lot of educators out there using forms in the classroom, and consequently, whenever we go to forms, you know, logged on with a educational account, we essentially have 2 options when creating a new form. I don't know if you saw, I clicked this little down arrow here. We can create a new quiz or a new form. And yeah, what we would generally use in an admin setup is not a quiz. You know, quizzes are very well suited for a classroom. The difference between a quiz and a form is that a quiz has right and wrong answers to the questions. And so as an educator, you can create the quiz and have behind the scenes you say this is the right answer. Benefits there being that, of course, Microsoft Forms will mark the results of the quiz that people have taken, and that can be really helpful. less helpful for us when we're just trying to gather data. So where possible, don't create a quiz, create a form, and then you won't be hassled to put in information in regarding the correct answers. So I've created a new form, and here we are. This is what we see right from scratch, a blank response. And actually, you know, this is a very, very intuitive, simple system to use. It doesn't take long to, you know, you could have a quick form up and running very quickly, and a form will comprise of maybe a heading at the top and then a set of questions which we're going to share with people. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to click at the top to put my title in. What do you want for dinner? Okay, so that's the title for our form. So we can see we're prompted now to click add new, and that will allow me to add a new question. Well, Microsoft have got smart over the last few years and started to add in sort of sample questions which we can utilize. Well, that could be quite useful. So and so if you put in a question something like how would you rate this thing, it will have to often pre-select, here are some options. I might say, I don't know, 1 to 5, good to bad. It will suggest potential stock answers that we might want to give to people. Anyway, yeah, let's just see what happens if we click dietary restrictions. Oh yeah, food preference and what's that. I could do that, and it's gonna, if I did that, it would add all of those questions in. That could be quite helpful. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is ask for the person's name. Now we can get a choice of different types of response question here. If we just look through, we've got choice, text, rating and date, and then some others. I'm going to choose text. I'll come back in a minute and show you through what the others are. So we click text here and say, what is your name? There we go. Now, and you can see this will allow the response will be just a line of text. I can below there make it so that this is required, and that means that the person responding to this form won't be able to click submit unless they fill this in. Well, I need that for there's no point in me people telling me what they want for dinner and I don't know who they are, so I want to know who those people are, and that is that. I'm going to add another question, and this time it's going to be choice. So this is where I'm going to put the meal choices. So here we go. We can simply start adding the options here. If you, well, let's put, you know, I don't know, soup. I can click enter and it just goes down to the next line. Stew, steak. And that is that. So we've got, it's as simple as that. We've just added, and at the bottom, there is the option to add another other option. So we could put other, and that will allow people to submit their choices. So I have created a questionnaire here. If I want to see what that's going to look like to end users, I can click preview in the top right, and that is what the survey will look like. You see it says, what's your name? It's got a red asterisk next to that because that is required. And then we've got our choices with a choice for people to put other and put their own value in there if they don't want any of those above. So just taking a step back, what is the value of doing this? Why do we bother to look to do this electronically online rather than using existing systems that we might have to gather data? Well, the administration burden of creating a form and then sharing it with people is the process of doing that is very simple, very quick. And then when it comes to gathering the data and processing that and analysing it, there's also massive time savings there in comparison with, I don't know, sending out a form to families, you know, a piece of paper which comes back with responses on which then have to be entered into a system. By having the data coming in electronically, yeah, we can automate that. And so just to dip into some typical examples of how this can be, you know, I've got a great deal of, you know, examples of how we've used it in school offices. But some schools might use this to get confirmation from staff if they read a policy. So you could do that. You could ask the person's name at the top, and then the next question might be, can you confirm that you've read this policy? And actually, you can have a multiple choice with just one answer, which is yes. We're not interested. We don't want them to complete the form if they haven't read the policy. So you might do that. And then the benefit being, once we've done that, we would be able to go to the responses tab. There's nothing here yet because obviously nobody's completed my dinner form, but we'd be able to see all the people here listed who have filled in the form and who've answered yes, I've read that policy. So quite a few schools I've seen use this as a method for doing this. We also have schools using forms to send home parent questionnaires to families. That's, you know, something which very much lends itself to an online questionnaire system. And again, the data comes in and we can very quickly see trends in the information without having to enter any data. The parents have entered it on our behalf. We can just go in, look and analyze that. And so to start to envisage what that might look like, I need to show you some of the other question types, and I'm going to dip over into this form, which is one I created earlier, just to show you a few of the question types which I've added on, and we will look at the responses as well in a moment, where there are already some responses there. So here's one I created, and I can click on the particular questions and make changes if I want to, or I could add a new question. So this question here, how good is the session so far? You can see we've got a star rating system. Out of 8 stars, I might choose, I mean 8 is a funny old number, probably 5 would be better. And I want to label, well, let me just show you, that would be a rating question, because we're asking somebody to rate things. And when rating, we have a choice between, you can rate based upon numbers or rate based upon stars, and we can add labels. And that's very important. If you're using rating, you will want to add labels, because that is this bit here. 1 star is rubbish and 5 is amazing. And let's just go to the preview and we can see what that looks like. We've got the star rating system here, and it says rubbish at one end and amazing at the other. And that's important. If you've got a rating system in place, it's important for your people who you're completing the question to understand what, you know, what are the what's the sort of axis really, what were they rating based upon. And so that's it. Choice is very simple, and you can determine, you know, what your rating is out of, and whether you do it in stars or not. And we can see we can choose between 2 stars and 10 if we want to. So if you are using a rating, always add a label, and that adds these labels at each end. This here, where you are, this is a text response, a bit like that one we did a minute ago where we asked for the name, but you might notice the box is bigger, and that lends itself well if we're trying to encourage people to give us a bit more information. To make the box bigger, we would simply create a text question, and there's a tick box here below the question to request a long answer. And look, if I toggle that, it goes from 1 line to sort of more of a paragraph. Here we go. This is a choice question. We did a choice a moment ago with the meals. The difference here is that I don't know if you can see the boxes are different shapes, and that is because I think, yeah, this allows people to come back with more than one answer. So these are more sort of check boxes rather than radio buttons. So just to show you what I mean, I could say it's sunny and something else. I could say it's all 3 if I wanted to. If I hadn't had that multiple answers box ticked, let's just untick that and go to preview, I can only select 1. So that is a choice, and we can see how we can sort of toggle the choices out. The other thing here, which can work quite well, particularly if you've got a lot of choices, is you can, by clicking this ellipsis in the bottom right hand corner of each question, we often get a few other options. I can turn that into a drop down. And so let's just see what that looks like. Now, look, I can select from the drop down list accordingly, and that can work very well, particularly if people are making a selection from a very long list. Something that's really helpful, we often end up having, this is a very popular sort of question type choice. If you've got a big, massive long list of different choices, you can copy and paste them in from, if you've got it in a Word document or an email or something, you can select all of your different choices, come here and paste, and it will paste them all in as a separate line, which can be really quick and time saving. So that's that. This last question on here is a date. It's just, it's very simple. It's a date type question. You can see people. Let's just see what it looks like from the end user point of view. We click here and we just select a date from a calendar view. There's no way of sort of overriding that, so it has to be a valid date that we select. So there's a few types of question there. I've covered the choice, text, rating, and date, and you can see those are the first four which show, those are by far and away the most popular types of question. Just to show you one or two of the other question types here. There's a ranking question type. I'm not sure if I've ever used this. This allows you to have a list of different options and people can drag them around to put them in a particular order. Like RT, let's add one of these. This is a sort of grid question type. So maybe if you're asking your respondents or respondees to rate different things against a set criteria on the top, this will work quite well for that. So, I don't know, well, style, presentation, all these different things we could have on the left, and then we could have good, bad, ugly along the top. And people just in that grid view, we're assessing different things against the same criteria. You can see it's a sort of matrix view, and it will require one answer per row. So that is the this option here, link RT, and that's really that. There's this net promoter score question which you won't use on a regular basis in truth. There is a file upload option. Here it is, and that can be really useful. Let me just actually we'll add the file upload in. Now you might notice it's grayed out, and the reason it is grayed out is because this only works internally. I found this out to my own cost a few days ago when I tried to use this with a form which was shared externally. So if in a moment, I'll change the settings to turn this on. In fact, I'll do it now. I'm going to go to the share button at the top and change. So we'll come back to this in a minute. But this top option here is where I can choose who is able to see this. And the fact it says anyone can respond is stopping my thing from working. So I'm going to change it so any people in my organization can respond. Click back, and now I go add here and drop this down, and the file upload option is available. And this is very simple. I just click OK, and then I can add the what I want the text to say. Please upload your I don't know, timesheet. Could be anything like that. I can choose how many files can be uploaded, the maximum size. And let's click preview in the top right, and we can see now there's the option this question 6 to upload a file. I can click here, browse a file on my computer and upload that. And what that will go, the file which is uploaded will be available within the results here, but will there also be a copy saved in my OneDrive. The person whoever created the form in the first place, their online documents area within 365 is where a copy of that document will be saved. But it only works internally within you have to have an organizational 365 account to be able to do that. Can be really useful when used for that. Okay, so we covered a few question types. We'll talk about sharing, and then I might come back and look at some of the advanced functionality in a minute. Okay, so here's a form. It's kind of ready to go, albeit it does look a bit bland, and I'd always recommend trying to jazz things up before you send them out. I often, if I'm sharing something externally, will add our organization school logo on, and I can do that by clicking the header at the top and this insert image button here, and I could upload a file from my computer. I'll go on. We'll have a look. Well, I will do it just to demonstrate, for better or worse. Let's just see what we've got here. Oh, this one will do. We'll use that. So I'll put this logo against it, and let's say that's our organizational logo. That's quite important, so that particularly if you're sharing things with parents or people outside of the school, it makes it look a little bit more professional. We can also click this theme button at the top, and choose some of the available themes, which, just jazzes it up and makes it, again, a little bit more engaging. And I can click preview, and I'd always recommend clicking preview before you share this with anyone, so you're quite content with what you've got. I've got lots of different question types here, and if you look, they've each got the red asterisks next to them, which means that anybody responding to this will have to answer all the questions before they're allowed to click the submit button at the bottom. I can click, look, I can choose to see what it looks like on a mobile device, which can be useful, because certainly if you're sharing things with parents, you'll probably find the vast majority will end up, if they're clicking on an email or something like that, will be accessing the form on a mobile device. So we can toggle that and just see that clearly works very well on a mobile device as well as it works on a computer. Let's click back. So let's say we want to share this. Okay, we can click the share option up at the top. And remember, this top bit, I could choose whether anyone could respond. That's now grayed out because I've got a question type to ask for the file upload, or I can choose only people in my organization. So I could even choose it so only specific people in the organization could access it. And once I'm happy that that's set correctly, I can click this copy button, and I've got a link on my ClickPad which I could paste into an email or paste onto the school website, which will allow people to click on the link, and they will basically come and see this view. This is what they will see, and they'll be able to go ahead and complete the information. Now, to the right of the share button is a 3 dots sort of ellipsis icon. Let's just click on that a minute and go to the settings button, because there's one or two other options that we have, around a form. If this first section here, this kind of mirrors some of those options we had under the share tab. But one of the things here I wanted to point out is that when we have only people in the organization can respond, we can choose if we could record the person's name or not. And if that's ticked by default there. And what that means is that if you're asking people in your organization to complete a form, you don't have to ask their name or their email address, because the system will automatically gather that and put it in the results. So, for example, my form going out to members of staff asking them if they have read a policy, I don't need to ask their name. I need to have one question. Have you read the policy? Yes or no? And if they say yes and click go, the response will be logged with that person's name and email address when they did it and their answer to the question, which in that instance forms quite a decent audit log. And so that is controlled here. If we want to anonymize results in the organization, we'd have to go to settings and untick that. Just scrolling down a bit, this tick box here, accept responses, basically turns the form on and off. If maybe I send a form out and actually think, oh, blimey, I wasn't ready for that, I could go in here and turn it off. And that means that people will be able to go, well, they won't be able to go to the form. It will throw up an error page. Turn that on and the form is open. I can also add start and end dates here. So if I want this if I'm saying to people, you have until 5 p.m. on Friday to complete this, I could actually put the end date and time there, and that will automatically close that form for submissions at that point. We can add a custom thank you message at the end, which is quite nice. And this one is particularly useful, this bottom one. We can add an email notification for each response, so that if maybe you have a form on the website which is there all the time, I don't know, for people to request info about school uniform or something random, but you want to leave the form there permanently. You don't want to go in checking the results of the form every week. So by ticking this, you'll get an email whenever someone goes in and responds to the form. You'll be able to go in and look at the answers. Okay. Right then, just one last thing on the share button, which is this share to collaborate option at the bottom. Now, often with forms, we want to share the results with colleagues. And by clicking down the bottom, share to collaborate, this creates a separate link. And anyone that has this link will be able to, yes, access the form, but they'll also have the responses tab at the top. Now, you have to be careful with this because we don't want that getting into the wrong hands. We don't want to accidentally send that to parents, because they would be able to see other people's responses and we potentially have a data breach on our hands. But often it's really useful when working with colleagues to share the responses which are coming in off a form. So you can create a link which gives someone access to the responses down here under share to collaborate. You just have to be careful. Make sure this link doesn't get mixed up with this one, and make sure this top one is the one that you're always sharing with parents and anybody else, people that shouldn't see the responses. Right then, after that little step away from some functionality, I wanted to just show you a little bit of the more advanced functionality within forms, and I'm going to skip over to a different sample form which I've got. Here it is. You can see I've got some questions here. Something you might notice if I scroll down, this form is broken into what we call sections, and a section is like a page, a different page. Let's just see what that looks like from the point of view of an end user. When I start the form, I can only see section 1. So I'm going to put some responses in here and then click next. And only when I click next will it take me to section 2. In fact, it didn't. It's taken me to section 3. And the reason for that is that I've got some branching turned on. There's some logic. So depending on what answers I put in, depending what sandwich filling I want, it takes me to a separate question. So let's just go back and look at the design for this form. So the first thing, if you're going to use logic, it does help if you've broken your form into sections, and this comes in particularly handy when you've got a really long form. If you've got something that's going to take some colleagues more than, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 minutes to complete, or parents, it can become quite laborious. And so by breaking it into different pages, it will guide them as they go and say how long it's likely to take them to complete the form, and it just sort of makes the whole thing a little bit less overwhelming. And we can add a section at any point by clicking Add New. This is where we would add questions, and if we click on that arrow at the end, there's an option to add a section there, and it's as simple as adding that. Let's just add a section. Here we are, got a new section. Each section can have a heading as well and a description. So I don't know, your info. So maybe we have a page which is set up just to gather information, people's contact information and that sort of thing. So by adding a heading, a title to each section, it just organizes the whole form well. And if we click on this top question here, what filling do you want, and go to the 3 dots, I'm going to go to add branching here. Now, here's one I made earlier. You can see there's already some branching here. So look, it has the question here. What filling do you want? Ham, cheese, or squid? And depending on the answer given, I can choose to go to a particular question or a particular section within the survey. Yeah, it's as simple as that. If I want to, if a question is in another section, I have to go to that section. But this basically allows, you can see by selecting here, depending on the response to a question, we can choose where you go next. And as I say, that can be particularly helpful if you're trying to, depending on the answers that people are given to a particular question, you can say, okay, you tell it, we'd like to know this then. If you didn't like it, what's the feedback? If you did like it, what else would you do to make it better? We can be smart, and often if you're creating more complicated surveys, and an example might be something like a parent questionnaire, that's something that you can look at. It's possible. It's quite advanced functionality. It's something that a lot of people don't use that much, but I wanted to show you that it's there. Let's just go back from the sort of more straightforward form that I had, taking a step back from some of that more advanced functionality. Here we are. I think the truth is, in most cases, use cases, you probably wouldn't add sections and wouldn't add branching. So I wanted to show you that, but don't sort of get overwhelmed by it. The most important part of any form is making sure you've got your questions phrased correctly in the right sort of question type. And as soon as you've done that and you've shared it, people will respond and complete it. And you can, within the same page, click responses at the top and see the data that has come back from colleagues. Nobody has answered this this top one yet, which is a bit disappointing. Weather, rain. Is the weather cloudy? We'll put a date in. Oh blimey! Yes, I wish I'm going through this and I've realised that I have to fill all these things in order to be able to submit the form. Well, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to untick the required box. That will do. I'll leave that on. So I'm going to go to my preview button, or I could, if I gave the link to somebody, they would now be able to go through and complete the survey. That's fine. We'll submit that. So this is what happens. You know, thanks, your response has been submitted. I click. Now I'm going to go to responses. I don't know if you can see at the top, it says there are 23 responses now. And by clicking on here, I get a summary of the different questions. So I can see on average, well, only one person's responded to how good is this session so far, but on average, that's 3 out of 5. So that will give me a very quick, you know, do a quick bit of maths on based upon the responses and the average response to give me the information. I can see the typical responses from this, what's the weather like where you are, and this question here, we can see people, you know, where people were able to put in different types of answer. I've got a sort of word cloud. What we've got on this page is basically a quick analysis of the data. Now, that might be helpful for me, it might not be. I might just want the raw information that people have submitted. And if I want to do that, I can click open in Excel here. It's going to open the file. And this will give me a spreadsheet with all the data and the responses on it. And some of the responses were quite a while ago. The response I did just now, you can see it's got my name and my email address because it knows I'm in the organization and it knows who I am because I'm logged in to be able to access it. And so that's an example that ask my name and email address, that they weren't questions in the survey, but the system has automatically captured that. And for internal usage, it's really helpful and really powerful. And look, if we look through the columns, we can see the different things that people have put. If you're used to using Excel, it's, you know, Excel is a great way of analysing particularly large amounts of data and filtering the data and sorting it and maybe creating charts and things like that. So having the data out into Excel, if you know what you're doing, can be quite useful. But we don't need to do that. As I said, this front page of the responses bit gives us an overview of the responses that people have given. And if I want to look at individual responses, I can click this view results button in the top left, and this will go through, show me each of the, you know, there's a whole load of people that have submitted this, but I think I added some of the other questions after they did it. But if I go through each one, we've used forms as a sort of online admissions form before, and this can be really useful because you want to go through one submission at a time. And by being in this, you know, view results section and clicking the arrows to go through, it's good because you can see a particular person and the responses they gave to different things. And, you know, let's take the example of a parent questionnaire. That this could be quite useful because, you know, you might spot trends there that people who are, I don't know, disillusioned with one thing might also have an issue with something else. And, you know, by going through and looking at all of a particular person's responses, you can start to build up a bit of a picture there. Now, one good thing, a couple of useful options which are hidden away in here, which a lot of people don't know about, are that you can delete a particular response or print the response, which can be quite useful. And so maybe if you've got a response which is inappropriate, or it's just throwing your information out, and I don't know, maybe it was a test or something, you can go in here and delete that particular response. Likewise, if you want to reuse a form and start from scratch, you can, on the responses page, click on the 3 dots, you can print a summary of everything and you can delete all of the responses. So maybe you've used a form before and you want to, you've finished with it and you want to start again. You can, and you know, and start from scratch with responses and don't want any of the previous data to complicate things. You can delete all responses and it will basically, you'll start from scratch, but without having to recreate the form. So that can be useful. If you did, you can, if we go back to the forms homepage here, let's see if it loads up. This is the bit where I first went to find my form and go into it. You can click the 3 dots to the right and you can do things like copy a form. So if you want to duplicate an existing form, you can do that. Or, you know, the example I gave in here by deleting all the responses basically allowed us to repurpose an existing form. So that's that. Just a couple of questions that have come in then. Can you sort the data in Excel format? Yes, you can. I mean, that comes down to Excel more than anything else. But if I just quickly load this up, let's say I'm just looking to see what I could sort here. But any of these columns are on the top, because it's created this within what we call a Microsoft Excel table. I could click. I don't know. Let's do this one. I don't know if you can see on this column, but some of them say cloudy. This one's got an exclamation mark in it. This one hasn't. But I want to show all of those that contain the word cloudy. So I could do a filter. So my filter would be that, and it's showing me everything that's got cloudy in it. I can click at the top there and clear the filter. I could likewise click in a column and sort it A to Z if I wanted to sort it alphabetically or in numerical value. I would do the same. Another question, is there an electronic signature function? The answer to that is no, there is not. If you're looking to gather data from people that've got a 365 account, then I would argue that collecting in order, you can see this answer here, this response here, it's got my email address and my name, and that is there because I'm logged in. I'm the person logged in completing this. So the fact is that in seeing this in the results, I have the assurance that this person was signed in with their account when they completed the form. And we generally see that as evidence that it was that person who completed the form. In terms of people outside the organisation, it's a limitation. I guess there are systems that, there are systems out there that help people to prove their identity, but they're all none of them are perfect, I'm afraid to say. So you do need to. It's a challenge in terms of verifying people's identity just generally. Certainly internally, the system does a good job because people have to be logged in order for their response to count.